So in this segment, we're going to be discussing kind of the return to austerity, I guess. And before any pro-Labour goons put in the comments, "Oh, there's not austerity." Just let me cook on this one, and then you can discuss it after you've watched, I don't know, like 4 minutes of the video, right? So you got grim budget on the horizon with tax rises and spending cuts likely. Okay, and so I do want to caveat this by saying, yes, we are seeing public sector pay increases above inflation, or at least above the current rates of inflation. It's not really going back to what it should be, which, okay, that's fine. Minimum wage increase, good, good. So I say that to say this, some of the other stuff, not so good. So when we look at what's being offered here, so the changes that she's considering, raising money from inheritance tax and capital gains, I'm for that. Sticking to plans for a 1% increase in public sector spending, even though it would involve cuts for some Whitehall departments. This is below inflation. So if inflation's at around above 2%, if you do a 1% increase in spending, that's a real terms spending cut because of inflation. So that's not good, is it? That's austerity in itself, or a form of austerity. Rejecting pressure to scrap the two-child benefit cap, again, austerity, even though you had these kind of pro-Labour people saying, well, obviously they can't get rid of it now, they're going to get rid of it in the budget. Where are those guys at? How come they're not covering this stuff coming out here? They're not even saying, oh, obviously Labour are going to get rid of the two-child cap. It's just press briefings or whatever. They're not even addressing it. It's crazy to me. Changing the way debt is measured to exclude the Bank of England. So that's an interesting one. But when it comes to it, you got this guy Anna Sawar saying no austerity under Labour. Sawar tells Scottish leaders, debate. This has not aged well. This has aged like milk. When you look at the UK's debt to GDP ratio, it's around it was around 99.5%. It's fallen down. There it is there. So if we remove the Bank of England's debt, the UK's debt to GDP ratio is at 91.6%. At the end of June. It was lower, obviously, last year. But, the Tories have kind of damaged the economy a lot. So there's not a lot of fiscal headroom because of the fact that the Labour government want to reduce our debt to GDP ratio. There's only two ways to do that. One is to reduce the debt, or the other one is to grow the economy. And when you look at their spending programs or whatever, they're not really going to grow the economy, especially with them cutting back on kind of big infrastructure projects as well, or at least smaller scale infrastructure projects. This would be an interesting move if they do change the way the kind of debt is measured, because if you exclude the money owed to the Bank of England, you're looking at 91.6%, although I don't know in reality how that would work because I'm not an economist. And so when you look at other countries' debt to GDP ratio, I always go back to France. France's debt to GDP ratio is 112.3%, yet we don't hear a lot of fear around France's national debt, not really. And this is a country that's gone for more infrastructure projects than we have, and they are. I think their economy is in a much better position than ours. Labour has no plans for a wealth tax. It can be revealed, despite Britain's biggest trade union Unite calling on the new government to implement one. And in reality, austerity does impact people. We can't forget that. This is from Frances Ryan saying it's a story Starmer, Reeves and their colleagues should bear in mind how imposing cuts not only ruins lives but soon results in the reverse of what was intended. Costs go up, often uncontrollably. This is about special educational needs schools. This about the cutting winter fuel payments. You've got mainstream commentators questioning Labour of this, asking are they crazy to do so, because typically pensioners are protected because they're a large voting bloc, especially for the Conservatives. I just don't. You have a situation where I don't know exactly how the payments are measured, but you do have obviously rich pensioners. You also have pensioners who are asset rich in terms of they've got a house they've owned their whole life. It's freehold. There's no mortgage on it, but they don't have a lot of cash income. And people can say, "Oh, why don't you just sell your house?" Like, it's such a dumb argument to make. Like, why would you not? Because a house isn't just a financial thing. It's where you've lived your whole life. Some of these people have lived in those houses 50, 60 years. For them to sell a house would be just ludicrous, in the sense of, like, where do you expect them to uproot and move to? It's silly. This from a while ago about Keir Starmer, 2022, when the energy prices were quite high. or 23 even, saying here's the choice: let the oil and gas companies continue to make huge profits, whilst every family across the UK suffer, or do something about it. Labour would stop the energy price cap going up. This would save families £1,000 per year. And the question is, how come Labour aren't doing these windfall tax, etc.? Let's actually have a listen to the profits.
Profits up 10 times over last. The figures are absolutely insane. British Gas profits up 10 times over last year, 751 million. BP, the first 3 months of this year, £4 billion in profit in 3 months. Shell, £22 billion profit. £22 billion, and the government looks at those figures, and yes, to be fair, they're not all UK profits, but they're still huge profits they're making. It looks at those figures and it says, actually, no, that we'll leave that aside. Where are we going to recoup?
This is it. How come there's no windfall tax under Labour that's happening? I don't get it. So here's the choice. Clearly you've made one. It's a political choice. This is the head of OffGEM talking about this.
In your programme, I talk to customers on a regular basis, and I know this is not welcome news for many households, and I know many households still struggle with all of their bills, including energy. But what we're announcing today is a 10% increase in the price cap. That's the regulated price that we lay out that says that's the maximum a company can charge if you're not in the wider market, if you're not on, for example, a fixed deal. Now, the reason we're making that change is those price increases are driven by the increase in cost in the international gas that we buy.
So let's look at the international gas price. I know they deal in the futures market and whatever. The prices come down. Like the international prices come down. According to this website anyways, Trading Economics. Fair enough, it's quite low, February 1924. When we look at it over the last 5 years, you think, right, energy price would come down. I know there was a government cap around this point, but it's lower than it has been in, last year, for example. I don't get how the price could still be up or going up. It doesn't make sense. Unless they can argue about staffing, but that's not really happened. Ed Miliband, Red Ed Redemption, rest in peace. Him talking about OffGEM. The fact is, the government, if the government wanted to, they could change the mandate of OffGEM. They could. Or they could say, look, you're not doing your job properly. We're going to look at abolishing this and just creating a new independent group. That's the role of government. As this person points out, you can abolish OffGEM if you want. You can overrule it. You can impose whatever constraint on energy prices you want. There are things the government can do here, but they're choosing to kind of wash their hands of it. It's just crazy to me. Someone asking, why is our energy going up and up, and energy prices broadly in Europe are going down? We're on the wrong track. So it should be up to the government to actually look at that, because clearly OffGEM's not doing its job. Rachel Reeves saying, I'll never forget the woman in Leeds I spoke to who had purple fingers because her pension wasn't enough to pay for the heating. Clearly she doesn't really remember her that well. She must have forgotten. And when it comes to other stuff, what are Labour playing at when it comes to certain other schemes? Like you've got Rachel Reeves talking about weighing a PFI style deal for New Thames Crossing. PFI was a disaster for the country, an absolute disaster. Letting the private sector come in and build this stuff at a huge cost, a huge longer term cost to the country. It makes absolutely zero sense. Completely brain dead. Honestly, anyone backing this stuff is a complete fraud, in my opinion. If you back these policies, you're not on the left. This is just a giveaway to companies and corporations. We've talked about schools in the past where there were PFI schools, right? And they had to have their grass a certain height, and only the company, the owner, the PFI company, could choose the height of the grass, and also the company that cuts it. Just endless amounts of money. Could you imagine, right? You got this crossing, there's a pothole on the road right here, right? And under the contract, only a specific company can deal with it. It has to be the pothole can be a certain depth, and once it exceeds that depth, they can pay out for a company to deal with it, and they'll ask for more money for the taxpayer under the contract. They can gouge people. It's crazy to me, absolutely crazy. When it comes to other stuff like mates for this one here,
dodgy contracts, privileged access, jobs for their mates. This is the return of Tory sleaze.
And then you got this guy here, Labour peer Wahid Ali, Starmer's biggest personal donor, paying 50k towards his clothes, his outfit, basically his whole fit. And he had a press pass to number 10, and he attended a party and whatever, with no explanation from number 10 as to why he got these things. And I saw someone tweet out like the only reason people are making this a big deal is because of homophobia or something like that. It's like, no, this is corruption. If this happened on the Conservatives, you'd call it out. It did happen on the Conservatives. Starmer called it out, and yet it's happening under his government. You got O'Brien asking, is this the first misstep of the Labour government? I think it's the over winter fuel payments. I think it's a complete stupidity, to be honest. Means testing benefits is dumb, and I think by keeping it in, if anyone did get mad about certain other things not being means tested, you could say, well, we don't means test winter fuel payments, etc. You could have used this as a way of making more universal kind of benefits for people, but once again, Reeves fumbles it. Just the stuff Starmer was saying kind of before this and after this, it's just crazy to me. When you look at the energy price cap, like when it spiked big, the government did step in. Liz Truss did. It was a complete giveaway to these companies. They should have done a windfall tax, to be honest. But you can see, the price gap between 2022 and 24 is about the same. Like, where is the support for people when this was a time when people were struggling as well? Around that time, kind of end of 21 into 22. It's just ludicrous, to me, honestly. When it comes to other stuff, Labour has no plan to fix the sewage crisis. Some of these topics are miscellaneous. You've got here Professor Danny Blanchflower, an economist, saying that prove me wrong, but Labour have no clear plan, and no clear economic ideas at all. How is social cohesion meant to be restored? And him saying they've got no vision. And he was a person who signed actually a letter endorsing Labour's kind of economic plan. And then him saying there was no alternative. And that's one of the things Labour kind of forgets, that they all voted in because the Conservative government completely fell out. They were done at that point. They were done. And so if Labour don't make big changes, all you're going to see is a lot more apathy and potentially a lot more votes for the Dems and the Greens, to be honest with you. But when it comes to this stuff, we've got our noble knight here ready to fight back against Labour, asking, I wonder if the Oasis reunion is what Starmer's referring to when he says things will get worse before they get better. So these are the people who say they'll hold Labour accountable. One person who mentioned in another video just kind of saying, this youth mobility scheme is going to happen, don't worry about it. And another person saying, despite Starmer promising more hard times for people who have, people have really struggled from 2007 to now. Don't worry, guys, it's going to be making some sort of joke about Oasis. Like, I just don't get it, honestly. These are the people who said they would hold Labour to account, give them a big majority, and we'll do something about it. It's bizarre. At least this professor has enough kind of understanding to say, like, there are problems with Labour, and he's willing to push back. The kind of noble knights of the Labour Party who pushed the Labour Party so much so, and kept calling people Tory enablers and whatever. Whenever we question Labour, where are they? I can't see them anywhere, to be honest. It's bizarre. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.